Well, I must thank everyone for the support once again. It means so much that people are willing to read the stories from little old me. Keyword here being old. I am in my mid-60s after all as I'm typing this. But this isn't about me. It's about my experiences. The things I've been through in my job. So, in that case, let's get going, shall we? Story 1. The Lights in the Sky. So, it's been about a year now. I've gone through my life's share of terrible monsters and ghouls, but if I were to tell you about each and every single one of them, we'd be here all day. And this would be a 200-part story. Now, I don't want that, and probably neither do you. But needless to say, I didn't find anything else out about the Foundation. During that time, one mission I had was to find info about the Foundation. After all, when in the vicinity of such a strange organization, how could you not? In the meantime, I've been getting close to Sheila. Not using her for info, as she knows just about as much as I do, but in a way that I don't get close to most people. But this isn't about that. Although, I was pressing Chris on the matter. Chris, I've been wondering. Yeah, bud? Are you part of the Foundation? Nah, I just take orders from them, and then I report to Gardner about the incidents I find. Fact, I've never met anyone besides her who works there. I've never been anywhere in the facility that isn't the hospital or a meeting room. The only thing I know that you don't is the coding. Not true. I've been brushing up on my code lingo. A class is civilian, B is staff, C class is Harmony Way, D class are the anomalies, and E class is leakage and whistleblowers, right? Yeah. You forgot I class though. What about F through H class? There is no F class. G and H class are for high-ranking employees only. I class is in case a D class ends up breaking into or out of the facility. Out? Oh, yeah, out. Second thing to know about these guys, they have some D-class anomalies for studying. Isn't putting D-class and anomaly together redundant? They're the same thing. It's like saying toast-type burnt bread. It's the same thing. Yeah, but it's required. Foundation policy, for some reason. Fair. Eventually, as we were watching over the road, we saw it. A bright light shining above in the skylight. I tell Chris, I didn't think airplanes flew over here. He replies, firstly, they do. Rarely, but they do. Secondly, those aren't airplanes. Notice how they're still. I look once again, and sure enough, the light was still. Suddenly, there were two. Don't look for too long. It's an invitation. For what? Well, you get boarded onto an alien spacecraft for them to experiment on you, and place some sort of chip and vaccine in you. They say it's immunity from the great disease or some shit. We know this because of the subjects brave enough to go through with the trial. I asked, just out of curiosity, what happens to the subject afterwards? He leans over and whispers, they supposedly retire with a good financial reward, enough so they don't have to work again. Granted, they sign a license saying they'll keep mum. I nod slowly, wondering more and more about this facility, and what it has to hold. He leans over and whispers, at least that's what I've heard. I've had my doubts. I nod slowly. Story 2. The Foundation, an investigation. So, ever since I've heard that, I've been more and more invested in figuring out the goings-on of the facility, and I've been planning a little sneak-in, alongside a friend of mine. So, you sure it's today? Sheila asked. For sure, I replied, as we both head over to the party store. If we're going to enter the facility, we'll need a disguise. We're going shopping for lab coats. I look at Sheila. So, if you didn't have the job at the Foundation, where would you be? I asked in a whisper. She replied, whispering back, don't know. I got looped up in all the Foundation stuff because I was always curious about the happenings of Harmony Way. After all, my dad was a Harmony Spelunker. In case you didn't know, a Harmony Spelunker is someone who frequents Harmony Way in order to figure out the mysteries behind it. She continued, but one day, he just didn't come back. No wreckage, nothing. Just gone. Ever since, I wanted to figure out what happened. I asked her, what do you think it was? I saw her tear up. If you don't want to answer, you don't need to, I added. No, it's fine. It's just, Harmony Way isn't the only mysterious factor in the area. And certainly not the only malicious one. I asked her, what's the other? She replied, what I think? Don't tell anyone I said this, but personally, I think he got caught by the Foundation. I asked, that's why you're doing this, isn't it? You want to know what happened to your father? She nodded slowly. Changing the subject, I asked, if you had a kid, what would you name it? Sheila looked up. I've always wanted a daughter named Cecile. I smile and nod. Cecile. That's a beautiful name. After we got our disguises, I start to drive to the entrance of the facility. But she comments that we're supposed to go to the opposite way than usual, pretty much behind Harmony Way. Once we get there, she pointed out a secret entrance inside Sandy Hill. We both went in with our disguises on. The first thing we saw was a large room and an elevator door. Above that was a display that read out the latest news and incidents. Mainly, they were classes of incidents that I haven't heard of. G, H, I, all the way down to Z. Incidents, whatever those were. Anyway, there was nothing else there. Not even Sheila knew what they were. So we went onto the elevator. There was a slot for some kind of key, and the buttons for each of the doors weren't lit up. We tried pressing them, but it was no use. I think we need some kind of key, I muttered. Maybe we can get a key from one of the officers? I nod to myself, and then realize that's why there aren't any security at the front door. If you don't have a key, you're not going to get anywhere. They can show everyone to the news, and no one's going to understand anyway. Hell, I'm an officer and I only know up to E. I'm an employee of this place. I know up to E, then G, and H. G and H. G-class incidents are relating to experiments, as to whether they succeed or not. H-class is whatever my dad was. Your dad? What did he say about it? He didn't know. All he said was H-class personnel, and he didn't tell me what it was. So he worked there? I think. I told her I'll be right back, and I went to go get one of the scientists and tell them that I needed something. Sure, man, but I'm only an intern. I only have access to levels 1 and 2. You know, the need-to-know basis of this place. Yeah, that's the question. I pulled him outside, then knocked him out and took the key from his pocket. Went back to the elevator, and sure enough, the buttons for 1 and 2 lit up. I've been on 1 before. My first day. It's just paperwork and applications. Try 2. I pressed 2 and we went down to the floor. It's a subject training academy, as the sign says. This is where the subjects are. There was a large sign that said 5-minute break. Thus, the subjects were all in the court. I turned to Sheila. We can interrogate them. How? I reply. I'm a police officer. It's kind of my thing. So we went up to one of the subjects and asked, Hey, how did you get here? The subject, wearing a white mask with a smiley face, looked at me. With a distorted voice, he replies, See, I was dirt poor. Then this guy came up. A guy named Philip. He said he had a job for me. A job that would pay a lot. So I accepted. I don't even know anything about this place. Just that I'm Class H personnel, and that everyone listens to the overseer. I look and then I go to Sheila. He's Class H. Like my dad. This means that your dad is a... Before I could finish, the guy wearing the disguise as well as multiple armed guards all came into the room. There's one of the officers, he yells. That's the one that beat me up. The officers, without a word, all aimed their rifles at us. But before they could shoot, they were all shot in the back, cracking their armor. They turned around to see who shot them, but they were gone. We took the opportunity to get up the elevator and go. As we run to the elevator, I saw another officer. He leaned to us and muttered, You're welcome, Charles. I looked at him and said, Chris? He simply nodded. Yeah, I saw both you guys in the car headed here. I knew it was no good, so I followed. And you didn't rat us out? Nah, started to get annoyed by these guys anyway. They don't even care about us. We're just a pawn in their larger game. And so are you, Sheila. We all are. Even the guys who try to kill you guys. They're just taking orders, in fear of a larger enemy. He looked down and finished, in fear of the overseer. And even then, I'm not entirely certain he's the head honcho of all of it. Or if it goes any deeper than that. We leave the elevator and quickly escape, ditching our disguises and heading back to the car. rushing home before they could track us. Story 3. The Vision. Chris and I were on our first job since the incident at the Foundation. Truth is, we weren't called back for a while. We were stressed out, but apparently Sheila said that's not kind of a big thing. We didn't find any valuable information after all. But Sheila has been digging up into her father's history. She's doing more underground work. Meanwhile, our jobs were so much more mundane. That is, until a few hours in. I blinked and suddenly the world around me shifted. Weird blue bubbles appeared everywhere, blue string attached to them. I turned to see Chris, but he was little more than a husk of his former self, covered in bubbles and strings. He muttered,
"Everlast, everlast, beware of the great virus."
I blinked again and the world returned to normal. I turned to Chris and said, "Hey, why were you a weird zombie thing?" Chris replies, "It's a D4 incident. Sometimes it happens to me." I just blinked to escape, but other officers in the past weren't so lucky. They never came back. Thankfully, you only disappeared for a minute. Story 4. More deer shit. So yeah, you read the title. The deer did something even bigger than last time. So we saw yet another spelunker slowly driving through Harmony Way. I was about to stop him, but then I saw the deer. I heeded Chris's warning and backed up. It looked at the passenger. Then I noticed its head starting to twist. This thing was twisting rapidly. More rapidly than I've ever seen anything move before. And then it leapt onto the car door, phased through the door, and ate the guy. I'm talking gobbled the guy up until there was nothing left. Not even bloodstains. The worst part is, it ate the non-vitals first. So the guy was still alive when it finally finished him off. Dear God, that thing is vicious. After that, it phased back through the door and vanished into midair to God knows where. That vision gave me nightmares for the next few days. Story number 5. The truth behind Harmony Way. So, after the incident, Chris and I were walking the area, patrolling. After that, we reported the incident to Sheila. So, Chris, it seems like we're not really needed in this area. You sure it's to patrol? Nothing bad really goes on here. You're thinking too critically. I've had my suspicions for a long time before you came here. As we were walking, another passenger came by. Chris continued. One civilian dying, one after another. On the hill, a portal appeared. Just like this. This guy's going to die. No matter how fast he goes, they always catch up. Harmony Way always catches up. It's sickening, you know? A tentacle appeared out of the portal. I signed up to protect people. The tentacle grabbed the car. But we can't do anything against these things. Or something happens. I'm not quite sure, but the last time a partner of mine was killed by one of the anomalies. We could see the guy in the car screaming. He tried to get out, but the tentacle was in the way. Well, the next day, we never saw him again. He vanished without a trace. Just like Sheila's dad. Exactly. You want to know my hypothesis? My explanation for all of this? The tentacle pulled the guy into the portal and closed. Truth is, my friend, if the authorities here gave two shits about people and their safety, they would have put up a ban from entering the area. Claimed it was dangerous, or that some serial killer was on the loose or something. But they're not, because they're in bed with the Foundation. A tear formed in his eye. Truth is, Charles, those guys in the Foundation aren't the only test subjects. They're just D-class subjects. But we're also subjects, and so are they. And all the casualties, all these deaths, they're just experiments. So they won't ever shut this place down. Because to them, we're not people. We're not even police officers. We're lab rats. And so are the civilians. We're all supposed to die eventually. It's Foundation policy.